So we've heard from some people who've benefited from programs that helped bridge the gap between the workforce, from the education system into the workforce. We heard from the governor about some key investments that he hopes to make that will help us do that. And now we're going to talk to some folks in industry about why bridging the gap from, oh, wow, you're all doing exactly what I hoped, I love you so much. Bridging the gap between the educational system and the workforce is so critical, not only for the lives of the citizens, but for businesses to thrive. I have with me Thompson Morrison on the far end. Thompson is the CEO of Fuse Insight and is also deeply involved in TAO, what is TAO?
The Technology Association of Oregon.
Thank you so much. Dwayne Johnson, the co-founder of Scale Up Partners. Charlie Hopewell, the COO of Sunset Manufacturing, and Steve Mullaney, PNC Construction. So let's start with you, Thompson. Talent of the future. What does it need to look like? What's critical? What's missing?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yeah, the talent of the future, the talent needs that you guys have right now. What does it need to look like? What's the difficulty?
So as we heard, the technology sector is increasingly important for driving the economy within the region. And as we grow and grow with very high-paying wages, the greatest challenge that we have is we don't have the talent. And that this is the greatest brake on our growth that we have. So the only way for us to survive right now is by actively importing talent from other regions. And that what we know that that's not sustainable. And so until we're able to actually develop that talent here more effectively by engaging our students with our industry and opening up those doors of opportunities, we will not be able to continue our growth as an industry.
Perfect. And Dwayne, we just heard from the governor about his commitment to equity issues and some of the challenges there. Your company is particularly engaged in inclusion, competitiveness, I read, which I was very interested by. What do you see going on as the need or the opportunity before us in terms of bridging education to the workforce?
Well, that's a great question. And what we look at is this is all a competitiveness issue. At the end of the day, we're looking at a $1 trillion market opportunity with the Internet of Things around technology. And that's going to be very skills dependent. How do you get the people that are going to be able to take advantage of those opportunities when they show up? Well, the answer is through education. But not just through education, you have to get everybody in the environment involved. So it's really a matter of inclusion. The diversity of ideas that are available in a diverse community will outstrip the opportunities and ability to impact in any other culture. So how do we actually get all those different groups of people, different ideas to work together and create a system, a continuum that is developing the skills that allows them to take advantage of it? That's what we're looking at doing with Scale Up Partners, and that's why I think the governor's idea around education is really, and investment is really important. How do you get the dollars into the system to allow us to compete effectively internationally?
And I think if you look at the demographics of how the state is changing, you go to a middle school, certainly in the metro area, we're not going to get less diverse. We're going to get more diverse. And if we don't figure out how to move those people into the workforce, then there's going to be a lot we're going to be importing more and more talent from outside, which is expensive for industry and it's a loss for our citizens. Charlie, do you echo what Thompson said? Anything different? What is the biggest need in terms of you're a manufacturing company, so what's the biggest need in terms of talent?
I think we echo, is that on? Yeah, I think we echo what Thompson had talked about, and I think that as I look across the audience and I've seen multiple faces out there, we all have effectively the same kinds of needs, only with different strata. And what I also sense is that we don't have the pipeline of those youngsters that are sitting up on the stage. And that's a difficulty that we have because of either economic or because of social policy issues. We haven't been able to bring on our next generation of talent within the state. And that's a critical element for us to try to build. it's also one that when I heard Governor Kitzhaber's comment about passion in regard, and the students' comment about passion, that's what's going to ignite us moving forward. We have to believe that our next generation is so critical that then that brings about action, and I think that's what today is all about.
So Charlie, why, in manufacturing, we have a long history of that in this state. Was it the loss of the CTE, in schools? Is that why we haven't had the pipeline?
Right. I think if we take a look at what's happened budget-wise and so forth, and I think I found it particularly in Metro versus the rural communities. Ontario, God bless them for having a shop class, by the way, and a welding class. But effectively, that's what's happened is that the funding models have taken away that hands-on experiential piece that's very critical. So, if I look out at the audience very quickly and I say, by a show of hands, if you define manufacturing as transforming a physical thing to something of higher value, how many companies, how many people out here represent an organization that way? Raise your hands.
Not many.
That's part of the problem. Because what we need to do is we need to have everybody here sitting at the table, participating in some small way to bring about some of those changes.
Great. Steve, construction company. So you're having difficulty getting all the talent you need here in Oregon?
Yes, we are. We've, as an industry in Oregon, we have, over the next decade, probably a $20,000 to $25,000 shortfall in our 20 to 25,000 person shortfall in skilled craftspeople. If you take a look around this building, this ceiling isn't staying up because of what you would consider in the media a ditch digger, a construction worker. It's a skilled craftsman. And what we need to do is to be able to bring the next generation of workers into the industry. And I believe that as we were talking, we've lost that generation because we've lost the CTE. The A and B students, they're going to be successful. It's the rest of the students that learn and are successful by having hands-on learning experiences that we need to start touching, and we need to get involved in their lives again. And we need to make them be encouraged to stay the course and be able to have CTE back into the schools.
So Thompson, what needs to happen with our educational system? I know you're already involved in this issue, so that more of the workers that you need are being grown here in Oregon.
Well, when we're talking about what is needed, it's not just about skills. It's also about the mindset. It's also about having creative and adaptive learners who are inspired learners. And one of the greatest challenges that we've seen is that we're working in an educational system that really hasn't changed much in the last 50 to 100 years, where the entire economy has been transformed, and digital technologies is continuing to transform every single industry in the state. So what we're seeing is that in the same way that we as companies have had to reimagine ourselves in this new reality, that we believe that our way that we educate our children has to also be reimagined. Reimagined in a way that it becomes much more purpose-driven, that inspires them to learn, because they want to learn. But the challenge that many students face is relevancy, because they're being taught subjects and they don't understand why they're being taught them. So as we have an opportunity here as an industry to engage with our students in ways that lets them see our passion, lets them see what excites us, and helps them begin to open up those doors of their own inspired learning, because that is what we need in order to drive an innovation-based economy.
And we heard great examples of that from the folks on stage here about where they didn't have a clear path in front of them, and somebody turned a light bulb on for them. And it does seem like there's an opportunity between industry, leadership, and the educational system to put more of these opportunities or pathways before young people at critical junctures in their educational careers. Dwayne, what would your recommendation be to the educational system to make sure that we are growing this next generation in the best way?
Well, my recommendation would be to recognize it's not just an education conversation. at the end of the day, and I'm on the board of the advisory board for I Have a Dream Foundation, we look at how to provide the ecosystem that allows a child to be successful. So I'll tell a little story. It's a personal story about what going to school was like for me when I was a kid. I grew up in New York. At the end of the day, I had to get to school before I could learn. Okay, that involved actually making my way through some people that didn't want me to get there because they wanted my 25 cents lunch money I had. Well, there are many places where that's where they live. That's where we live. And before you can even think about focusing on your achievement, you have to understand you have to be able to eat, you have to be able to get to class, you have to be able to do all the things that some folks take for granted. So can we build the partnerships that will allow people to actually get to the schools, be focused, and as Thompson says, see the opportunities that are available to them, because in this country we have great opportunities, we just have to connect folks to them.
So on that point, Charlie, for those of you in leading industries, what's your imaginary best outcome in terms of 5-10 years down the road, in terms of how industry is intersecting with the educational community to make these opportunities known by more of our students? What would you hope for?
Well, I think from industry standpoint, we have to somehow also align ourselves on some standards, some certifications and so forth, and I think the governor's 40-40-20, quite frankly, supports that. If we can align on those, we can drive those not only into the infrastructure, but we can also drive those down into the K-12 experience. We can get those integrated into those learnings. So if I was to paint a perfect picture for myself in the future, I would paint a picture that a customer would come to me and say, we want you to do a particular project, and I have a pool of individuals that's out there, that's available, that has baseline skill sets that allows them to walk into our shop, walk up to a machine, and actually know what the heck it does. And I think that's part of the problem right now if you define manufacturing. So many of our students have been isolated from the concept. Another personal story, I had a group of students that we were painting a wall recently. And I was surprised and awestruck at how few of them knew the process of opening, stirring, dipping a paintbrush appropriately, and painting a wall.
Wow.
And it's simply, I don't fault them. I don't necessarily fault the education system. We are all responsible for making sure that there is the examples and the connections that we need in the network into the schools. So industry, it's our responsibility to step up to engage, because education, you don't have to do this alone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Charlie, parting thought?
Me?
Yeah. You're not Charlie.
That's
You're Steve.
In the same manner, my goal for 5 to 10 years would be several tracks that students can, once they get into high school, be aware of multiple industries. In the CTE, we talk about bringing the shop classes back, but it's more than just the shop classes. It's career technical education. It's so they can go in and they can see a dentist's chair and understand how to be someone in the medical field. And to be able to have those 2 tracks and know and find that passion. And as Thompson told me a couple days ago, the 2 tracks are great, but what we need to start looking for is the combining of those 2 tracks and having innovative leaders come out of seeing both sides of those tracks and becoming great citizens.
Fantastic.